It's Friday evening, August 14th. I want to talk about probably the most important thing that I've talked about in regards to COVID since this whole thing started. And I'm going to talk about the positivity rate in a community. I'm going to talk about sensitivity and specificity. And I'm going to show you why the numbers are incorrect. I'm going to show you why the numbers that we're seeing are wrong. This isn't my data, it's data from the CDC and the FDA and the test manufacturers. Throughout Illinois, the number being reported in central Illinois is a positivity rate 2.5%. Now what that means at 2.5% is that of all the tests being performed, 2.5% of the tests are coming back positive. That's a positivity rate of 2.5%. Now that has varied between 2.5 to 3.5, even close to 4%. We're just going to say it's 3%. You can go on the Illinois Department of Public Health website and see what is the positivity rate. That's the number of tests that are being performed that come back positive. And we're going to pick 3%. That means 3% of the population tested is positive. You're going to have to understand sensitivity and you're going to have to understand specificity. The most important concept that you're going to have to understand is that as disease prevalence in the community is low, false positives is high. The number of false positives is much higher when disease prevalence is low. I'm going to use the example of disease prevalence of 1%. Now, you're saying, well, wait a minute, disease prevalence is 1%, but the positivity rate is 3%, you said. I'm going to explain that. The number of people that actively have the disease at any given time is not a large number. We've picked 3% as the prevalence. It's actually probably less than that, but we're using the positivity rate, which is something different. Positivity rate is the rate of people that are testing positive on the test. That's a different thing. The number of people that test positive is different than the actual number of people that truly have the disease in the community. Why are those two numbers different? We know that they're different because the tests aren't completely 100% accurate. Disease prevalence being low falsely elevates the number of positives. The tests that we're using to detect COVID are not perfect. We know that. You can check the FDA website, you can check the manufacturer's website, and they vary on sensitivity. Sensitivity is the accuracy of diagnosing a particular patient who's positive as really testing positive. Meaning, if we have 100 people that we know are positive, if we perform the test on them, how many people will actually test positive? I'm going to use the 90% number in this example. Many test manufacturers will report their data, all of them actually do, and it's publicly available because they have to certify that through the FDA. And those rates vary between 85% sensitive to 90%, sometimes 95%. I'm going to use 90% sensitivity. For a test that has 90% sensitivity, that means if we have 100 people that are positive and we do the test on them, 90 people will test positive. That means that we're going to pick up 90 out of 100 of those positives. We're going to miss 10%. Okay, that's sensitivity. Specificity is the ability to properly get a negative test right, to distinguish negative from positive. Sensitivity and specificity are different. Many tests have a specificity approaching 95%. And what that means is that while they're not perfect, they're not 100%, for negative patients, it will be correct. It will correctly diagnose a negative patient 95% of the time. That sounds really good. The problem comes when disease prevalence is very low. And what do I mean by that? As disease prevalence in the community is low, the number of false positives go up. I'll try to explain. Let's assume a population of 1,000 people and assume a disease prevalence of 1%. That means in those 1,000 people, we will have 10 people that actually are positive for the illness. Not test positive, but 10 people out of 1,000 will actually have the disease if the disease prevalence is 1%. Okay. Obviously, it'd be 1 out of 100, or it'd be 10 in 1,000. Prevalence of 1%, that means 10 will be positive. If we perform a test that has a 90% sensitivity, that means out of the 10 people that we test that are truly positive, it will correctly diagnose 9 out of those 10 people. Thus, the 9 out of 10 means 90% sensitive for picking up a positive patient. Now let's go to specificity. Specificity is the ability to distinguish negatives from true negatives. We'll use the 95% sensitive. It sounds really good, except the law of large numbers means that in that example, where disease prevalence is low, where disease prevalence is low at 1%, that means there's really in that population of 1,000 people, there's only going to be 10 people that are truly positive. There's going to be 990 people that are actually truly negative. But when we do the test on them, and the test has a specificity of 95%, when you test 990 of those actually true negatives, you won't come up with 990 negatives. It'll only be 95% accurate, and you're going to have, out of that, 95% of 990 is 940. And what that means is, that's rounded, 940 people will test negative, 50 people will test falsely positive because their test isn't perfect. Now, what that means is when we use a test that has a 90% sensitivity, we're going to pick up 9 out of the 10 true positives. When we use a test that has a specificity of 95%, we will correctly identify 940 of the negatives, but we're going to be falsely diagnosing 50 people out of the 990 as positive when they're falsely positive. If we add the two together, we add the 50 false positives and the 9 true positives, we come up with a rate of 5.9%, or 59 out of 1,000. 50 plus 9 is 59. That's a rate of, we get a false rate or a positivity rate of 5.9%. You see, and what is driving that false positive number is the low low prevalence of the disease in the community. The point being is this is exactly what's happening right now. we're seeing large numbers of people that are completely asymptomatic, have no symptoms whatsoever, yet they're testing positive. And what's causing that? You say, I feel fine. We have a low prevalence of the disease. Our tests, although they're pretty good, 95% specific, have a 5% falseness to them. And the law of large numbers mean when we test 990 of the people that we know are negative, we're going to falsely diagnose 50 of those 990 people as having the illness when they really don't. Now, how can you check to see if this is true? First, it's not me. They reported the issue of false negatives August 6th in a major article in the New England Journal of Medicine. But it's plain statistics. It's plain law of large numbers, and when your test is not perfect and you have a large number of negatives and you multiply, in our example, 990 times 95%, you don't get 990, you get 940. That means 50 people out of that 990 are going to falsely test positive. In reality, out of that pool of 1,000 people that we know are only 10 are positive, we're going to falsely identify 59 people as positive. The number is exaggerated for every 1,000 people. With 2,000 people, we will falsely identify 118 people that are positive, when in fact, really only 18 are positive. This can be explained why we're seeing so many people that are testing positive but have no symptoms whatsoever. Now, there are some people that have asymptomatic illness, but there's also a large number of people who have false positives. And false positives are a problem because it falsely inflates the number of people that are truly positive in the community. We send people into quarantine. We prevent them from going to work. We do contact tracing on all of their contacts, and we do testing on people that they have contacted, further complicating the problem, because as our testing goes up, our number of false positives goes up. This is probably the most important thing you can understand about why our numbers are going up so drastically. More testing. How can you check it? In May, April, we had death rates sky high. Now we're seeing death rates 1 in a day. On Monday, we had 1 in the entire state. 10, 15, 20. Okay, but we're reporting large numbers of positivity. And so either the disease has just become much less aggressive, or many of the people that are testing positive are false positives, falsely positive because our test isn't perfect. We need to look into that. Not a single politician in the state of Illinois understands this. Very few, maybe 1 or 2 politicians in the nation understand this. You haven't heard this anywhere but right here. Needs to be investigated. If anybody can prove me wrong, I challenge them to do it. Use 90% sensitivity. You go to the FDA website, you can go to the CDC, you can go to the manufacturer's website. You'll see they don't report perfect tests. I want to go through the math for you real quick. Okay. When the disease prevalence is 1%, there will be 10 true positives in a population of 1,000 people. If we use a test that has 90% sensitivity, we'll pick up 9 out of those 10 people and identify them as positive. Put those over here. There will be one person who's falsely negative. That means we failed to identify him. There will, in that population of 1% prevalence, there will be 990 people who are truly negative. Yet when we do a test that has a specificity of 95%, we're going to come up with 940 true negatives, and we will falsely identify 50 people as positive when they're not. The reported positivity rate in that case will be 5.9%. Now, the state of Illinois, Department of Public Health, is reporting that the positivity rate right now in central Illinois, Bloomington, Normal, Champaign, is between 2.5% to 3% or 1.5% to 2%. What I'm telling you is the actual true incidence of the disease is much lower than that. I hope you consider this. There is a significant cost to overdiagnosing people with COVID, and that's what's occurring. By all accounts, there are more people being falsely identified as having the illness right now than there are people that actually have it. In my example, disease prevalence of 1%, it's 9, we're catching 9 people that are truly positive, but we're falsely diagnosing 59 people as having it. 50 people are incorrectly being diagnosed. 50 to 9. A rate of almost 500% more. I hope you understand this. I'm going to put the numbers on my Facebook site so you can check my math. I encourage you to check my math. If you think it's wrong, let me know. I challenge you to check my math and tell me I'm wrong. You can go in on the FDA website and check all of the statistics out, okay? The confidence level on these tests is in the highest rate, 95%, okay? You'll see those numbers in many cases, the specificity is below 90%. All that being said, if you like this video, check the like button, share this video. I hope this video helps explain why the testing is falsely diagnosing a large number of people as positive when in fact they're not positive. Thanks. Have a good weekend.